This is Rob Tebbett for Boxing Social in association with Betfred. All right, Shane?
Yeah, I'm all right, mate. How you doing? You good?
Yeah, not too bad, thanks. Delighted, as always, to be joined here today by Shane McGUIGAN. We're down at the lovely University of Kent. How are you, Shane?
Oh, lovely University of Kent. Thank you very much. Appreciate all the help. I'm very good. I'm good, thanks, mate. Well rested. Took a little bit of a break. A few days off. And yeah, back. Obviously, been back a good few weeks now. Training away with JT, with Lawrence. CBS has just had a nice fight that's been announced, and Malik Zinad as well, Libyan boxer I'm training. So yeah, gym's fine.
Also had another new addition to the gym. It's sat on your left ear. Can you explain that, please?
What's that? Yeah, that's. How do I explain it? I mean, maybe it's a midlife crisis. Maybe it's not. My missus Josephine, my new missus, said, you know, maybe it's a good idea. I got a lot of sticks, so I'm rocking it. I'm just that's what I'm doing. Might change it to gold, might bling it up a little bit. It blends in with a watch and that. So yeah, I might go for the Mr. T look.
It's an interesting look.
We're in Canterbury now, so I'm trying to blend in.
Blend in how?
There's lots of goths around here. There's lots of like emo kids, lots of indie kids. So I think it's good. It's good for me. I think I can go, you know, incognito, a bit in disguise, and I think, you know, it takes a bit of you. I mean, there's grey hairs coming through, so this is a stressful job. It's a stressful life, and yeah, it's a midlife crisis.
What were you, 31, 30?
Turning 31, yeah. Wikipedia's got my name, my age wrong, so I think it says I'm born in August, but no, I'm in November the 8th.
I remember now. Your 30th birthday party was the same day as Usyk Bellew, wasn't it?
I don't know. I'm not a boxing fan, so it might have been.
I remember it was because I couldn't come to your birthday because I was at the show. But anyway, let's move on. How was your break? I've known you for a fair while now. I know you try and get away when you can, but it's not very often. You're somebody who has kind of an obsessive nature when it comes to the sport of boxing. When you're away, are you able to shut that off?
Yeah, I mean, I've just said I don't really watch boxing, but you just said I'm obsessive. But
I know for a fact that you do watch a lot of boxing, but carry on.
Yeah, I'm joking. No, it's good. Yeah, I mean, it was a good little break, and I'd been in camp. The thing about Taylor is Taylor'd been in camp for a long time. He had done a lot of rounds with Luke Campbell. We were preparing for a fight date a little bit earlier. The Sowlands kind of said, you know, there was a inkling of a date a little bit earlier in September, but then it got pushed back to the 26th of October. Obviously, Progress pulled that publicity stunt of himself pulling out. So yeah, I spoke with Josh and I was like, look, I think it's good to have a deload week. And we done that, and then we come back in and we're flying. So break was good. Spent a lot of time eating a lot of food and just getting some vitamin D. So that was very, very helpful. But no, it's good. Obviously, what happened with my sister and that, I think, you know, it was good to just clear the head and get away and try and just reflect.
You mentioned Josh, and obviously he was part of Luke Campbell's camp as he prepared for Vasyl Lomachenko. How does that change things for Josh? I mean, he's not somebody who balloons up a lot in weight when he's out of the gym anyway, but having that kind of intense high-class sparring before coming into quote-unquote camp, how does that affect his preparation and your role as a trainer preparing him?
I think it's only been beneficial. You know, the thing about Josh is he's quite good at managing, as you said, managing his weight. So it's not like when we come into camp, we don't need 12, 14 weeks to drop a lot of weight. I think, you know, a good 10-week camp is good for Josh. He's always training. He's got a little bit of an obsessive nature himself. And, you know, he was just talking earlier about when he's out of camp that he hates running because he can't go out and do a 4 or 5 mile jog. It always turns into just, you know, him pushing himself in a sprint. So I think with Josh, I've got to manage him a little bit more, you know, so he doesn't burn himself out. And but this camp's been really good, and you know, like I've been training him since since he was an amateur. You know, obviously since he turned professional, but from the amateurs, I should have said. And you know, he's been in my gym. He's a gym rat. You know, he's been in my gym the whole time, whether he had a fight on the horizon or not. He was always coming down, always like wanting to be around and learn. And you know, like I know his body, I know the way he where he performs well at, you know, where his weight's the best at. And this camp, we've been at that weight for a very long time. He actually had some wisdom teeth taken out, so he had to like be on a liquid-based diet. And with that, it dropped his weight down to like 69 kilos. And that was a good month and a half, 2 months ago. And and he basically has been at that weight ever since. So I think the longer you're at your fighting weight, the stronger and more powerful you feel. So you're not sort of, a lot of boxers might be 70, say if they're boxing at 64, they might be good 10, 11 kilos overweight, then they'll spend that time dropping down, then the last week or 2 weeks they'll cut the whole rest of the weight, but then they're getting back to a weight that they haven't really settled at. And with Josh, you know, he spent a lot of time at that weight now, he's properly settled at it. And you know, because your energy is always a little bit low when you're cutting weight, but he's been eating loads of food, and he's been, you know, eating more food than he normally would to maintain his weight now, because he's been in camp for such a long time, and I think it's been a benefit.
Spoke to Josh about an hour ago. Seems very relaxed. I mean, the fight that we always inevitably end up going back to is the Victor Postol fight back at middle of last year, around June time last year, where he wasn't necessarily relaxed, certainly on fight night. How has he changed since then, in your opinion? I mean, he does seem a little bit more, relaxed is probably the word that I'm going with.
I think he's just got confidence in himself. Even before the Postol fight, he hadn't really done the distance. I mean, he'd done like 11 rounds of, he'd done 8 rounds in Vegas, and then he'd done 11 rounds of Vasquez, and then it was like, and even then he was in control. He was always the one in control of the pace, and I think, you know, he obviously knew Postol was a former world champion, and he wasn't as, you know, he wasn't done at all. He was still quite fresh, so I think he was just worried about the distance. And he has an unbelievable engine, and he can recover like that. I mean, it's because of the intensity that he trains at. But even then, doesn't matter how fit you are, you're still going to doubt yourself against someone that's a bit more seasoned. And I think, you know, the Postol fight, he's just matured mentally so much from it, because he went the distance. He got a little bit hurt in the fight, and managed to get his way through it. And also, he didn't box very well. I mean, he just didn't box to his best ability, and I think he didn't box to his best ability because of the way he was like stressing the whole way through camp. I don't know, and nothing was really flowing. So even since then, I mean, we had some sparring sessions this camp, and you're thinking like, whoa, like, you know, you're getting hit far too much, so you're not performing. Like, come on, like, just give me an extra 5-10%. And then he's, you know, and as it's human nature to start not necessarily doubting yourself, but just getting frustrated at yourself. And, you know, if that had been 3-4 fights ago, he would be going, panicking. But he knows it's just, this is what happens. This is part of camp. Some days you feel good, and other days you feel terrible, and you feel like you're back to being a novice, and you're like, Jesus. But that's your body just being tired, and it's part of the camp life. And I think, you know, since that Postol fight, he's just taken so much from it. He obviously boxed Ryan Martin, which was quite an easy fight, but the whole way through that camp, he was in such good shape, and his headspace was good. And then obviously the Baranchek fight as well, headspace was good, weight was good. Obviously we had that little issue with the scales, and he drank some water after it, and then Roach. But, you know, even then, that would have offset so many fighters, and it might have offset him if it had been, you know, in his 10th or 11th fight. But he just was like, that's right, let's get weight off, and I'll just get back on the scales, because he'd already drunk, you know, a pound's worth or half a pound's worth of water, so he had to go and skip, and that just shows you that, like, you know, he's matured massively. And I think the fact that he has had a Postol fight before he entered the tournament, and then he's had a relatively easy fight, but then he had a Baranchek fight, which was like, it was a hard fought, it wasn't a technical fight, but it was a hard fought 12 rounds. You know your engine's, is there. He had to dig in a couple of times as well because it was physically draining, and you wouldn't want that in close succession. But the fact that we've had a longer period of time to rest now as well just means that he's going to be the one that is more prepared moving into this final, because Prograis had two relative walkovers. Flanagan just had been beaten by Morris Hooker in the fight before. He looked a little bit gun shy and just stood off him, didn't really force the pace and just let him box to his game. And Relic dropped about 40 pounds in a short space of time because he ballooned up in weight and then crashed the weight, and that was also a relatively easy fight. So I think Prograis is actually at a disservice because he hasn't had a test.
This fight's, I think it's fair to say, the biggest fight of Josh's career. Unified world title fight, final of the World Boxing Super Series. With kind of Josh's intensity, certainly I know what he's like sometimes in fight week, do you have to look out more when you're going into a big fight like this? Are you more wary of his mental state going into such a big fight?
No, I think because just the fact that we've done so many camps together and we've spent so many years together, I think, and he knows that he's seen boxers like Groves being in the final. He's seen Frampton being in a unification fight against Quigg and then going out to the States. I mean, he's travelled with these guys and he's seen Hay the whole way through the Bellew fight as well, in box office as well. So it's like he's been around it, and I don't think he gets fazed by it. I think he's the kind of guy that's been relishing this opportunity, and he wants to be the best in the division. And I believe Prograis and Prograis are the two best in the division. I think that both of them beat Ramirez, who's the other unified champion. So I think this is literally for the Ring magazine. This is for this is the unification fight for them to see who's number one in the division. And I think that's something that he spent his whole life working towards achieving. And there's certain boxers that are gym fighters that look brilliant in the gym, and then they go out there underneath the lights on fight night and they just don't perform. But Josh Taylor definitely performs, and he's shown me that, and he's proved that to everybody so far, that he just loves it. He relishes that occasion.
Second World Boxing Super Series final for yourself as a trainer. Obviously the first one didn't go your way. Sorry, George. Is there not more pressure on you, but are you looking at this as an opportunity for you to not necessarily right the wrongs? It's two different fights, but does that give you added inspiration to win it this time around? The fact that you came close last year and didn't.
I mean, I always want my fighters to win, and I always want to make sure that we tick all the boxes. But I mean, going into Saudi Arabia, George had a dislocated shoulder, and that was just a struggle. The whole way through that camp was just a struggle. Couldn't spar as much, so I feel a lot more confident going into this final because I think it was also for the Ring magazine belt as well. It's like the fact that we don't have to go to Saudi Arabia is a benefit, as well. Going to somewhere that we don't know the culture and stuff like that, and also the fact that George's shoulder wasn't up to scratch. So it would have always been a really hard fight no matter what without his shoulder. And it just it was a tough one, that camp. But going into this final, I'm much more confident, and also I really want one of my fighters to get their hands on that massive trophy and bring it back to the gym, and also I've never had a Ring magazine world champion, so I think that would also be a nice touch.
Following the footsteps of current trainer of the year, Joe Gallagher, if you win. I know that'll mean a lot to you. Luke Campbell. Actually, no, before we talk about Luke Campbell, Lawrence Okolie, of course, returns to the ring on the same night. Yeah. Even Garby, you've told me since the time that you started working with Lawrence that you'll see the best of him when you face opponents that are going to come to win. Even Garby is going to represent that. What can we expect in that fight?
It's going to be a great fight. I really, really think it's going to be a good fight. I think Ngarby is a very good fighter. He's European champion. Big, strong. Well, he's not that tall, but he's just a big set. He's a solid lump. Can punch a lot. he's been trained by Ingle as well. He's a good trainer, so they'll have a good game plan. So it's a nice one. It's a good one for us to get our teeth stuck into. And I think, with Lawrence as well, as I said, the best is yet to come with him, and he likes guys to sort of not open themselves up to try and win, but a lot of the time when you try and punch with Lawrence, like you are going to leave gaps. And I think up until now he's either knocked somebody out or he's sort of laboured to a points decision. And I think this is he can't hold on the inside because Ngabou's good in close. He works the body well. And I think it's going to be a higher pace fight than what he's used to, but I've now had this second camp with him. The first camp was a long camp anyway because the Jack Massey fight fell through, and then and just the fact that we've had a lot of time together. That means that I've had more time to implement what I want technically from him, and he just takes to it really well. So I think the fact that Ngabou will be so determined to win the fight, and even if he's down 6 rounds to 3 or something late on, he's not going to be happy to just go and lose on points. He's going to open himself up and try and wing and try and really take Lawrence's head off. And I think in doing so, I think Lawrence will knock him out.
Now that card, there was the whole hoo-ha at the press conference between Derek Chisora and everybody else who was at the press conference. That fight's now fell through. We've woke up this morning to news that Joseph Parker's had to withdraw from the fight. Does that change? Apparently an illness. I spoke to Kevin Barry this morning. He wouldn't go any deeper than that. Just said it was an illness.
Was it a spider bite?
I don't know.
Okay.
But anyway, how does that change, if at all, the show in general? Because obviously much was made of the fact that it was rolled into one, Parker Chisora, Taylor Prograis. Does that change anything for you guys? Is it still just business as usual? What can you tell me?
There's no change for us. I mean, I think Parker Chisora would have been a good fight, but I don't think it would be anywhere near as good of a fight as Prograis versus Taylor, and even Lawrence versus Ngabou. I think that's an even better fight. I think Chisora is exciting, but he's so unpredictable. You don't really know what you're going to get with him. And I think a young, fresh Parker would have just boxed his ears off. And I think that it was, maybe they might put him in with a lesser opposition, and it might even be a better fight. So we'll see. But it doesn't really change the dynamics for us anyway, because the just the thing that we're concentrating on, focus on, is that we're topping the bill, and that it's headlining it for a unified world champion with 2 unbeaten guys, not 9 or 10 losses on one of their records. It's about the best versus the best, and if Chisora goes on the card, obviously I think he will. He'll probably box somebody else. But what you get with Derek Chisora. You're gonna have a good fight, but yeah, it's not elite world level boxing.
What was going through your mind when he was going through his whole Derek Chisora rigmarole at the press conference, talking about he should be topping the bill, etc.? What were your thoughts on that?
I wasn't there. Dad went to that one, and I seen it, and I just thought, it reeks of David Haye. It reeks of them, like the two of them just plotting something just to wind somebody up and upset the apple cart. So I didn't take any notice of it.
Lawrence was in here earlier, tongue-in-cheek, talking about he would potentially step in to face Derek Chisora.
Yeah, I think obviously that's he's going to move to heavyweight at some stage, but he's joking about it. But the fact that I think the fact that Lawrence believes that he could beat Derek Chisora is a good thing. The fact that he's so confident in his own ability. But for now, our task is Ngabou, and we actually, it would have been good sparring for us to go up and spar Chisora. But yeah, I don't think Lawrence is going to move up to heavyweight yet.
Luke Campbell, How is Luke? Haven't seen him since a couple of days after the fight. We sat down and did an interview. Seemed in relatively good spirits at the time. How is he?
He's good. He's on great form. He's going to Turkey for a wedding, I think, today or tomorrow for a couple of days. So he's on good form. Myself, my brother Jake, and Eddie Hearn, we all sat down with Luke last week, and we sort of plotted where we want to go and what sort of fights are on the horizon. And obviously at the same time, Devon, thank God. Sorry, the sounds has gone off. The heating systems has gone off. And then Devon Haney obviously was doing a press tour at the same time. So we were saying, potentially that's a good fight for us. We would love that. We would love that fight. But yeah, he's good. He's resting up. I think he's probably going to get a fight in late December, mid-December in LA. I think there's potentially a DAZN show on the 13th of December, and we'll probably look to go out on that. So that will just be like a little 10-round tick over for him, and then we'll look to maybe bring a show back in like a Hull or something like that. And then get a world title fight in the summer next year. It's just a tricky one. Gervonta Davis has now moved up to lightweight, which we thought, that Lomachenko would potentially sort of move back down, or because he was speaking about going down to 130 pounds, even 126. So. For us, we were like, okay, we'll see what we'll keep ourselves active, and we'll see what governing body we want to go down. That's going to give us a fair shot. And now that the Tank has moved up, he's number one in the WBA. But yeah, we've just got to stay active and stay positive and work our way up. I think we'll either try and get up the WBC again, or we'll go the WBO route or IBF. Because it's hard to keep all the governing bodies happy, when you want to fight for all 4 belts, but even if you fight as all 4 belts with the IBF, at some stage one of them's going to strip him, because you can't fight. Your mandatories are going to be sitting there waiting, and he's going to want just solely big fights, and one of those belts is going to come off him. So it's just a keeping him active now, keeping him positive, and he's come off although it was a loss, it was a great performance, and I think he caused Lomachenko a lot more problems than people gave Luke credit that he was going to do. Let's just talk for it. Are they? Is that what they are? They're like motion lights. Okay, cool. So I think a lot of people were surprised at how effective Luke was, and I think a lot of people were saying, if he'd have been in there with anybody else, he would be world champion. And he hasn't had an easy route. He's boxed, Linares and lost on a split, and his dad passed away 10 days before it, so he wasn't in the best headspace, and he's rebuilt himself, and then had to box, the best fighter in our generation, really. Him and Canelo are at the moment. They're the 2 guys that, they're guys that are pioneering the sport. And I think he had 396 amateur fights and only lost 1. And he's a very, very good fighter. And I think the fact that we had to go in against him as well was a tough one for us, But he did himself a load of credit and put on a great performance, and got hurt a couple of times in the fight, bit down his gum shield, and showed his true champion, that warrior mindset inside him, and got up and fought to the end, and was still dangerous the whole way through. So I would like a Devon Haney fight for him. I would like, Richard Commey's going to be boxing. He's going to be boxing Lomachenko, but I'd still love something like like that fight, for instance, if it was for a world title. If he didn't fight if he didn't fight Commey, so I know he's got to fight Lopez. I think he's going to beat Lopez, though. I think Commey will beat him.
Why do you think that?
Why do I think that? Because I just think that. I think he's had more tests. He's had more acid tests, and he's come through them. And I think I used to bring Frampton over to do a lot of sparring with Commey, and I just know that he's a good fighter, and he's got Taylor sparred him as well. when he was based in Essex and that, and he's heavy-handed and he's an effective guy, and I think he's really learned his craft. I think Lopez has got some vulnerabilities, maybe.
Chris Billam-Smith has got himself a fight. Returns on November the 23rd against Craig Glover. Good to see him back in the ring. Obviously, the last time we saw him in the ring was against Richard Riakporhe. Talk to me about that fight.
Yeah, I mean, Riakporhe fight was a good fight, but I think, I don't know, I watched it back and the commentary was just terrible. The Sky commentary was favouring Riakporhe, just it was big wide misses and just because he was sort of pushing the pace, but I thought we won it. I thought we won it by a couple, but we didn't get it. We literally we lost it by 1 point, and that was to do with a knockdown. That was, he pushed him into the ropes as well. So, and a few rounds later, Chris hit him with a left hook, and the ropes sort of kept him up, but nothing was called. It was just a bit of a bitter pill to swallow with that one. But he had the champion's rights, and we can't sort of get too offended by it. We've got to go out there and try and beat Craig Glover, which I think he will. I mean, the two of them are sparred, and it's going to be a great fight. They both their styles will really blend well. They both like to fight mid to short range, and it's just going to be a fantastic TV fight. The two of them sparring was brilliant, and I know that Bellew didn't really want it, and coming off a loss for us, we were like, it's quite a tough fight. But the two of them have to take the opportunity, and when Lawrence wins this European title, I think he'll probably vacate the Commonwealth, and it will probably be for the vacant Commonwealth title. So, yeah, I mean it's a good one. We've managed to get him a good quality fight straight off the bat after a loss. So, but it's only a learning fight for him. I think Chris himself will admit that he took a lot from that fight, and he walked away from it very, very gutted and disappointed because he knows that he had more to offer, and but once again we had to take the Riakporhe fight because of opportunity. Like you're not going to be, unless you go to the Olympics and unless you've got a huge sort of profile behind you, you're not going to get those opportunities. And the way boxing is at the moment in the UK, there's so many good pros and there's so many talented people out there, and you need to be in competitive fights to get titles. And we took that fight. So, but it was a good fight for him, and it was a great learning experience for him. And he was tired in a fight, and he was using up a lot of unnecessary energy. And if they ever boxed again, I believe he'd beat him. So hopefully, we can get this for a Commonwealth title and beat Craig Glover, and then get the rematch if Riakporhe boxes Massey and wins against Massey for British and Commonwealth title fight later down, well, not later down the year, but next year.
Coming off that loss to Richard Riakporhe, going into a fight against Craig Glover, which is, it's, as you've mentioned, he's going into a good fight. It's not a 6-rounder or an 8-rounder against somebody at the bottom of a card. What do you expect Chris to have learned from the first fight that he can bring into this fight, considering that he's boxing at a good standard and not coming back at that kind of level?
Well, he's learned that. Yeah, I mean that was his first time he did a 10-rounder, and this will be a 12-rounder, depending on the title. And he's coming back into camp. Well, to be honest, he came back into camp a little bit unmotivated because it was like he sort of thought he would have to rebuild, and I said, look, let's just be patient. We actually got him out on a card on October the 12th. We were planning to get him a little 6-rounder just to keep busy, and then I was making phone calls with Eddie and sort of pushing to get him out, and he said, look, I'll tell you what, we were going to do Hyde versus Glover, but what about Billam-Smith? I said, that's great, we'll take that. And got to thank Eddie Hearn because he really delivered on that one, and got to really appreciate the opportunity to get him out again.
Moving away from all things McGUIGAN's gym, this past weekend, Errol Spence versus Shawn Porter, a fight I know you would have watched with a close eye. Yeah. Talk to me about that fight.
Great fight. What a fight. I mean, it was a nip and tuck fight the whole way through. I think Spence tried to fight him at his own game, tried to roughhouse him a little bit too much rather than keep it sensible and just sort of stick on the jab a little bit more. I think, he really, whether Kenny Porter and Sean Porter got into his head, he just wanted to knock him out. And with that, I think he didn't box to his best ability. But what a fight it was! It was an amazing fight, and up until the knockdown, it was nip and tuck, And I only think it was nip and tuck, just as I said, just because Spence wasn't really thinking; he was just hunting him down. And I actually watched an interview on one of the build-ups. It was like an interview with Mayweather and Spence talking about how Spence is going to take over the welterweight division and stuff, and how they did some rounds together, sparring and stuff, and he was just like, you're just far too eager. That's what he was like when he was younger, and he was like, as you get older, you understand that, just sticking to the jab and making it a little bit more boring and basic is the way to do it. And I think, that fight in itself was an amazing fight, but it could have been made so much easier for Spence, but he really tried to roughhouse him and match him on the inside, and Port was just so unorthodox and so physical that it became a closer fight than expected.
I know before the fight you said that you didn't expect Porter to see the final bell.
I don't know what I'm talking about.
You don't know what you're talking about. We've seen in the last fight Mikey Garcia. We've seen it now with Sean Porter. I mean, Sean Porter's very tough and very rugged, but I asked the question anyway. Do you think that Spence's power potentially is a little bit overrated at world level, elite level?
No, I don't think so. I think Spence chose the power lock glove. He sort of normally chooses an MX glove, which is like a more puncher's glove, and he chooses the Grants. But I think he was probably thinking, I'm going to hit Porter loads, and he's very physically puts his head down, so you're going to be hitting the top of his head a lot. So he's probably he put a little bit more padding. He used the power lock gloves, which is just a much safer glove, and I think that probably did him a little bit of a disservice. He probably, if I was advising him, I would have said, where the MX is, because if you hit him clean, he'll go. And he did hit him clean later on in the fight, and he did drop, but I don't think his power's overrated. I think his power's is there, but I just think he never hit him clean once. And I think when he did hit him, it was a cracking shot. But Sean Porter's just he's a beast. He's just such a physical guy with a great chin. And I remember when I was out there, when we were out there, Taylor was doing a lot of rounds with them, but then he was also mixing it in a few of the other days with Caleb Plant, who's a super middleweight world champion. And I just think he's used to getting hit by big lumps, Porter, because he used to box at 165 pounds, the 75 kilo division when he was an amateur. So I think he's used to absorbing a lot of power shots. I think and I think he's got a good chin, but the Spence that turned up, just never hit him properly clean once.
Danny Garcia climbed into the ring afterwards. By all accounts, that's the fight that's going to happen next, apparently. What do you make of that fight?
I think there was rumours that it was going to be Manny Pacquiao, wasn't it, for another unification, and then I don't know what's going on there. I would advise Manny Pacquiao you'd have no, you're never going to listen to me, but I would advise him not to take the Errol Spence fight, because it's a young man's sport, and someone like Errol Spence is so fresh. But Danny Garcia would be a great fight, because he's live and he's young himself. He's got a good left hook, and obviously Sean Porter beat him, but I just think he's a more technical fighter than Sean Porter, and I think him versus Errol Spence would be a great fight. I still think Spence will probably beat him, maybe stop him, but it would be a great fight. So I think him versus Garcia, him versus Pacquiao, him versus Crawford's the one that everyone wants to see. But I think that politics will take a lot of time. Bob Arum and Al Heyman will really struggle to get that fight made until the public really demand it. And I think if he keeps doing what he's doing, beats Garcia and cleans up, potentially beats Pacquiao, and then Crawford fight, you know, the two of them will want it, and in time I think it might happen. But yeah, I think he's the guy at the moment. Spencer's the guy at the moment that people want to tune in to watch, and even though Garcia's had a loss in his record and stuff, I think he's still a credible opponent.
I haven't seen you since I got back from Las Vegas. Went out to watch Tyson Fury against Otto Wallin. I think it's fair to say that was a lot more competitive, a lot more dramatic than people had anticipated going in. What did you make of the fight?
You're going to ask me what I made of the fight, but you know I would have only seen highlights of that fight. I was on a little break. But from what I saw, I tuned in the next day and I watched 2 rounds and I was like, oh, this is going to be a boring fight. And then I texted you and you said, it was actually a really entertaining fight. But then, you know, so I rewatched it and I thought, I just think the cut in itself forced Fury to box a certain way and take too many risks. And I think the fact that Fury's not a one-punch knockout artist, with that lower opposition, he's never going to look like he's just devastating. But the fact that whenever he goes up and boxes like the likes of Wilder or potentially AJ or whoever, or the big guys that are, you know, like, let's be honest, AJ would have destroyed Otto in 2 or 3 rounds, do you know what I mean? And so would Deontay Wilder. But put Fury in against the 2 of them, and he's so clever and fiddles about, and I think he causes problems. So I wouldn't read into too much about Tyson Fury and thinking that, you know, that he's going backwards or that Ben Davison's wrong for him. I've heard a lot of criticism and I think it's massively unjust. I just think Tyson Fury will always struggle to look the part because of his lack of power, you know. But when he's in against the top guys, he causes problems. And I think he's stiff enough hitter. You know, most massive punchers have a element and sense of vulnerability, you know, within them. So, you know, like he hurt Wilder a few times, but I just think, you know, he performs his best when he's really up for it and he's in against proper opposition.
With a cut as bad as that, I mean, there's 40-something stitches. Do you think, from your personal opinion, it's realistic to expect him to fight Wilder in February? That's the fight they're talking about. I mean, there seems to be a little bit up in the air now following that injury. What's your thoughts?
It does seem a little bit ambitious, but everybody's body heals differently, and you know, Tyson Fury's, I think he spars a lot of the time without a head guard. I mean, that's the only problem. If he's sparring without a head guard, that thing's going to open up a lot, and he's going to have to be careful with it and take his time. And I mean, if I was advising him, I would say, do not rush back. The public's going to demand that Wilder rematch anyway, so just take your time, be on your schedule, and if it means that you're forcing it back to April, May, June, then so be it, because he's not strapped for cash. He's made a lot of money. Wilder's not strapped for cash, and you know, I just think just let it heal and give yourself the best opportunity to go into a full training camp and prepare the right way. Wilder
himself has announced the fight. Luis Ortiz, November the 23rd, same night as Mr. Billam-Smith over there. What do you make of that fight?
Heard he's on CBS Glover's undercard, but what would I make of it? I think it was a great fight the first time. Taylor boxed that night, I think. What fight was it? Taylor versus, I think it would have been, Campbell, the guy that thing he pulled out, and then we got that late replacement. But yeah, he was hurt. Obviously, in the first fight, Wilder was hurt a lot, and it was just a great fight. The two of them were slinging in wide, heavy shots, and he got the knockout. But I see him sort of being far too fresh for Ortiz in the rematch. You know, he's had another couple of years. I mean, I don't know what age he is now. He must be 46, 47. I mean, I don't think anybody knows, but. You know, and he's had so many drug bans. I just think like the best Ortiz was years ago, and Wilder will chin him.
Something just popped into my head. I forgot about this. Get your opinion. Nigel Benn returning to the ring, 55 years of age. Thoughts?
I think I think he's bonkers. But I also don't want to be disrespectful to him because I've got so much respect for him. And if this is the thing that gives him peace, then so be it. I mean, everyone battles demons day to day, and I've heard him saying that he felt like his career was a bit of a lie, and I felt and that he had depression, and that he was in amongst probably a haze, as people are when they suffer that. But it's a long time. It's a long time since that Collins fight, and Sakio Bika is past his best, but he's just so physically strong and such a great chin, and I just hope that he gets. It's not for too many rounds. It's maybe a 6-rounder or an 8-rounder. Max an 8-rounder. I mean, I would force something. I mean, like looking after him, I would try and get the lights one sec. Thanks, Chris. I would force the Dark Destroyer. Wow, that was him speaking. No, I'd force him to, or the people around him, to make sure that they're wearing safe gloves. That it's not gonna it's not gonna be too many rounds, because it's just as you get older, as humans, we get a bit more vulnerable. There's more aches and pains, and that's exactly the same with the head. I mean, the head is surrounded by cerebral fluid, and you got to make sure, like, he's cutting weight as well at 55 years of age. It doesn't make me feel good about it, the sport. I don't think it doesn't make me feel safe. And this is a sport that I love so much, but it's a young man's sport, and you got people like Hopkins that went into his 50s, but he was active the whole way through. He was getting used to getting hit, and even then against Kovalev, that last fight against Kovalev was sickening, And I just think, like, Joe Smith. But even the Kovalev fight was when he took such a beating, and then the Smith fight, yeah. But he just went on too long, and the Bernard Hopkins that was boxing in his 30s was just not the same man, and I think Nigel he's a clever guy, and he's got himself a lot of money, and he's invested his money well, but maybe having his son being in the spotlight and being in the boxing world has been it's been bad for him, because it's sort of brought out that inner demon that he's always wanted to do.
Okay, well, just before we finish, won't go too much into it, but KSI Logan Paul, I'm not going to ask you about the fight. What I want to know is, if you had the opportunity to put Josh Taylor on that undercard, would you take it?
Absolutely, yes, I would, because DAZN. I mean, I spoke to Eddie at length about how they built up DAZN and how they've invested it, and I think it's a fantastic business model. And obviously, they're going into different countries now, and they're getting different subscribers. And every time someone like Canelo boxes, there might be 200-300 extra subscribers, because he's bringing in this audience that's consistent of Mexicans and Americans and just boxing fans over the world. But somebody like KSI and Logan Paul. I mean, I went to, I think it was my brother's wedding, like last year, and I went to there, and my little cousin Bronwyn was like, she goes, you're friends with KSI? And I was like, what? She's like, yeah, he follows you on Instagram, you follow him back. And I was like, that's mad. Like, I've never seen any, like, obviously he's come down the gym, but I've never been at like a YouTuber. I don't spend my time on YouTube. I don't spend my time like watching influencers and stuff like that. And how much of, like, I mean, at that same party, that same wedding, there was Taylor, there was so many boxing names, and there was like famous faces as well. And I was just thinking, like, wow, you were just obsessed with KSI, and I think it just brings in a different audience. It just brings in, and Logan, is it Paul Logan or Logan Paul? He's got a huge following in the States as well. So even if 10% of the audience that tune in that night, that buy DAZN, and then they cancel it, and 10% keep their subscription, it's a very smart business move from DAZN. But also, to get traction and following from people that are never normally going to tune into boxing. And I think it would if Josh was on that undercard, I'd be like 100% get on it, because you're just opening yourself up to a whole new fan, and also the people that are boxing fans as well get a chance to see it. So it's a very, very clever move.
Just quickly, because the troops are assembling, you've got to do a circuit, which I'll definitely be out of here before you start. Yeah. How, like you said, I know KSI came into the gym when you were over at Wandsworth. What kind of level is he? What kind of, I mean, because I didn't watch the first fight, I mean, what kind of, what did you make of him while he was in the gym, so to speak?
I mean, he's improved probably since then, and that, like, but they're like not white collar amateur boxing sort of level. But the good thing is the two of them are boxing at that standard together. I mean, I wouldn't say to KSI, I don't know what weight this is matched at, maybe a light heavyweight, go in there and fight Bivol or Beterbiev. Do you know what I mean? I'd be like, whoa. But you know, like if they were to turn pro and box normal boxers, they would get found out. Even journeymen would find that, you know, would be too much for them. But the fact that they're boxing another influencers and they're just two raw novices, I don't particularly like the fact that it's got 10-ounce horsehair gloves on and they both got the potential of getting stretched. I mean, that's not going to be fun for us to watch. I mean, it's when you see somebody getting knocked out and they're capable of handling themselves, and you think, okay, well, that's the sport of boxing. But when somebody's getting knocked out that just is an untrained athlete, that for the first time he's getting hit with proper wraps on, 10-ounce gloves on, no head guards, it's a different sport. And you know, the two of them are athletes, so they'll both be able to punch each other with a decent amount of force behind it. But it's about how you slip, catch, and how you keep your senses, and how you don't get, like, you know, the rabbit in headlights, sort of starstruck by it. And I just think I don't know. I just think it's a bit. It's good for boxing in one way, but it's also bad for it might expose the sport a little bit.
Golovkin, Derevianchenko, quickly before we go.
Golovkin, Derevianchenko. Golovkin did not look good in his last fight, did he? You've just said that.
I don't believe he looked at his best against Steve Rolls, no.
Okay. You should be neutral, but you're not.
You asked my opinion.
Well, okay, yeah. Derevianchenko, obviously Danny Jacobs beat him, but he's a decent puncher. And Golovkin, I don't know. I think Golovkin's going to beat him, but I don't think it's going to be a walkover. But once again, he's past his best, but Derevianchenko must have had 5 amateur fights, so he's also past his best. But the two of them are decent punchers, and they've both got good chins. And I think it's going to be an exciting fight. It'll be a war. Golovkin, everyone says, why doesn't he just get up on his toes and move about and jab? Because that's the Golovkin that everyone knew in the amateurs. He had the ability to do that. I think training in Big Bear for so many years, and the fact that he's 36, is he 36 now? 37. I just think he doesn't have that ability to get and make fights easy for himself anymore. And I think he's gonna be in a hard fight, but I think he'll come through it with a win. Okay, well, thanks very much as always for speaking to Boxing Social, Mr. McGUIGAN. Nice to see you. Nice to see all of the guys in the gym, and nice to see your new mate there on your left ear. Thanks very much as always. We'll catch up with you soon. Appreciate it. Headbutt. Thanks, mate.